Hello, welcome to this course of Industrial Inorganic Chemistry, where we will be talking some important aspects related to chemistry which is used for industry, and some part what we will see as your industrial inorganic chemistry component, where we can have one part as industry, one part is inorganic chemistry, and how all these things are utilized for industry. So, what are these things? We will see that when we see that a particular topic what we cover in the laboratory research, which can change our way of living and increase our quality of life. That means a particular chemicals which can be useful for our life, our day-to-day life, and which will be also useful for chemical industry. So, chemical industry can touch different aspects of our life and different sorts of industry like agriculture, food, hygiene, catalysis and construction. So, if we take some example that how we use the inorganic chemistry for agriculture, obviously we know that the fertilizer is the most important component, where fertilizer can be produced from the natural sources like nitrogen, like potassium, like phosphate rocks. So, agriculture is the most important aspect for us when we talk in terms of agricultural inorganic chemistry in that way. Similarly, the food material and the hygiene and the different catalysis. So, the catalyst what we can make is very much useful in terms of the metal ions, particularly the specialty chemicals what we can make in using the different types of catalysts. So, catalyst can also be made in terms of the corresponding metal ions, and those metal ions can be useful in terms of some ligands which can be bound to those metal ion centers. So, we will be using something where this course will be useful to value add some raw materials, because from the mineral sources and all other sources, taking the help of the geologist, we can have some example for the different raw materials we can have. And those raw materials, how we can push them to a particular consumer product, that we can see that by transforming them into the chemicals required to the manufacture of consumer products what we will be consuming. So, that is most important thing, that the raw materials what we get from the natural sources, the minerals and the ores, and ultimately the final products what we will be getting as the consumer products is the thing which will be based on the inorganic chemistry, not your organic chemistry. So, inorganic chemistry will be useful in that way, how we can convert all these things related to the metal ions to the phosphate rocks and other agricultural products. So, it is basically a subdivision of chemical industry which is manufacturing inorganic products, and when you produce these and in large scale, the inorganic chemicals or the inorganic materials what we can have for this large scale production in the industrial inorganic chemistry are chloralkalis, the sulfuric acids, the sulfates and the fertilizer, as just now I told. So, if we take the simple example of sulfates, where we produce these sulfates from the natural source of sulfur, we get the sulfur in the elemental form, also sulfur is available to us, and this sulfur can be converted to sulfur dioxide by oxidation, then to trioxide and ultimately to sulfuric acid. So, these sulfuric acid when is giving us some important materials like your sulfates. So, sulfates can be your inorganic metal ion salts like nickel sulfate, like iron sulfate or the cobalt sulfates. And at the same time, these sulfates can be useful for giving some organic sulfates. As we all know that a very useful surfactant material nowadays we use in the shampoos and in the detergents as the sodium dodecyl sulfate. So, how we incorporate that sulfate in an organic backbone, that can be done from the use of your sulfuric acid or any other source which is giving you sulfur trioxide or dioxide. So, apart from these large scale industries, we can have the fine chemicals, we can have the reagents and raw materials and the preparation of inorganic specialty materials. So, within fine chemicals thing, we can have the high purity inorganic materials on a much larger scale, and sometimes we will make these in the smaller scale. So, bulk and the raw materials what we can have in the bulk amount, and then we can go for making fine chemicals. Then we can have some reagents for raw materials which is useful for high tech industries, the pharmaceuticals and the electronic industry. And lastly, we will cover in this particular course the preparation of inorganic specialty chemicals, the catalysts, the pigments and the propellants. So, we will be seeing that these things can be very much useful in the industry, and industry are utilizing the knowledge of basic inorganic chemistry. So, basic inorganic chemistry sometimes will be very much useful in understanding all these things, particularly when we want to produce something in a large scale, because the industry will be handling in a tons of materials. Is unlike your laboratory scale where we are utilizing in gram scale or the milligram scale. So, the ton scale industries are very much useful because we have to concern about the corresponding safety requirement and the amount of raw materials what we will be handling. Like a particular mineral we will be handling, suppose we are using pyrolusite, which we all know is a manganese dioxide material. So, this manganese dioxide, how we can convert the manganese dioxide to potassium permanganate. So, that can be your aspect for industrial inorganic chemistry. So, these are all huge industrial things. So, these industrial establishments, they are utilizing all these in a different way, but whatever thing, the laboratory analysis, the quality control and all these things we can do in our laboratory. So, the laboratory will also be the corresponding part related to the industrial thing what we can use. So, the laboratory analysis, the quality control and the development of new products, the development of new catalysts will also be useful for this particular type of course of study. So, we will all cover in a stepwise manner, starting from our raw material what we can use from the mineral source, the ore source, and we will be utilizing all these as basic chemicals, then as raw materials, ultimately to the development of the different fine chemicals and the catalyst which will be useful for pharmaceutical industry or the petrochemical industry. So, all these things will be covered in a stepwise manner to the entire course. Thank you very much.